yeah, I'd like to be different, no problem, rebel, no problem. But in the end, people had to validate me.
Hi, I'm Bram van der Goos, and thanks for listening to the Before and After Show, the podcast in which we are zooming in on specific moments in life that brought you further. My personal before and after moment was specifically last year when I was not happy in my job. Fortunately, I was lucky enough that CCV gave me the opportunity to figure out what I really like to do. I have to say it was quite a challenge and I had to do a lot of puzzling, but eventually I knew what to do. Make podcast. Podcast about personal stories, personal journeys, but most important, your personal events. These specific moments in life that brought you further. My manager loved the idea and said, go. So, enjoy this episode while walking, sitting, running, sleeping, or however you like to listen to podcasts. And let's start. I first met our next guest in the beginning of 2020. We collaborated on a design sprint together with the goal to optimize our website in a faster and more efficient way. I found it a really pleasant collaboration and very helpful. After that, we didn't speak for almost a year or maybe longer, but somewhere I knew I had to talk with this guest to ask him if he could join this show. So I reached out to him. And he was really enthusiastic and therefore he is our next guest. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Reinier Meenhorst. Welcome, Reinier. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Will.
I was really happy that you were enthusiastic because you could be not that enthusiastic as well, of course, right?
Happens.
It happens. Is this your first recording for a podcast or do you normally do these things more often?
Well, yeah, we do a lot of video casts nowadays because after Corona, it was still in that, so it's still going on. But we did a lot of recordings of design presentations and stuff like that, but not really shows like this or real conversations.
And I recall that when we started to collaborate, we were just in the beginning, I guess, from COVID. And we did a design sprint. And I will ask you a few things about the design sprint later on as well. Not per se on this specific design sprint, but in general to explain a bit more what you can do with it. But I recall that it was the first time that you had to do a design sprint like that, right? It was new for you as well, so it was exciting.
Yeah, one of the main points of a design sprint was getting everybody together before COVID. And the time that we did that was, I think, the first lockdown.
Yeah, true.
Because we postponed several times. And then, it had to happen. So that was the first complete online design sprint. And it went well. I hope you still agree. But yeah, it was really pioneering as well with new tools and stuff like that. But a lot of things went even smoother than in real life because when you have post-its on a wall, it's more difficult to share them with the people who work with you. And so when you use a digital board, it's much easier to share all the notes afterwards and stuff like that. So most meetings are still online for us.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of COVID in that sense.
Yeah.
That the acceptance of online meetings and not have to go and to meet at one's office or whatsoever, that's gone, I guess. And so it's more efficient already.
Yeah, when you meet, it's really for extras. Either it's more time consuming to do it online or it should be just fun, because I like the social aspect of live meetings is something I value more than I did before. So in efficiency and cost, I think the online meetings are great, and I'm happy that they are happening all the time, because if you drive 30 kilometers to a spot and have a meeting of half an hour. It's just not very efficient. We can do that much more with less time-consuming ways now. So that's great. But it's really nice to see people in real life too, I think.
That's true. That's true.
That's a bonus then.
Yeah, I like to zoom in a little bit more on design sprints because you're an expert in that, and for our listeners, I like to explain what it is. Yeah. But before we do that, let's start with some statements. I will give you 3 statements, and you can only say yes or no. And along the way, we will discuss this a bit more deeply, or I guess the good listeners will hear, okay, this is why he said no, or this is why he said yes. So let's see.
So the yes or no questions, this is the hard part.
This is the
only saying yes or no.
Yeah. Normally, I had some interviews where the interview stopped after this one, before this one, because this was really too hard to do. No.
We'll see.
Just kidding. Yeah, let's see. Okay, let's start with the first one.
Hit me up.
I will never work for myself again.
Oh, that's a no. So.
Yeah, that's a no.
That's a no.
No, yeah. You don't. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you can explain later on.
Yeah. Constructing yes/no questions is very hard as well.
Yeah, I know. That's true. I'm getting better.
So this is the trick question part.
Yeah, that was
should have warned me.
The second one is, I'll never want to work for a boss again.
Oh, no.
All right. And the last one is, I don't care what people think of me.
Well, no. We'll get back to that, I think. But
all right.
that will be too much to say yes.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
I'm still human.
You're still human, yeah. All right. So this was the difficult part. You succeeded. Thank you. Now we can continue without the yes and no format. So maybe it's a good idea that you start to introduce yourself shortly.
Yeah. So I'm Reinier. And, we met in my function in my job as a producer at 8. 8 is a UX design and branding agency. And that's my... latest employer, and I'm very happy there. I have 2 kids, and I try to combine my job with taking care of them. And one is already older, so there's no problem. He can help me. And the little one who's turning 9 and this week. Especially since the COVID times, we have this kind of household together in which we roll. So we spend a lot of time together, working and playing. Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, and 51 years old.
Young, 51 years young. I guess.
Young. Yeah. Don't ask my colleagues. They're all young.
Yeah. All right, thank you for the introduction. When we start working together, I reached out to you via a colleague to ask you to help us with a design sprint. And that was the first time that we actually did a design sprint. But for the listeners, maybe I think it's a good idea that you explain a little bit more about what a design sprint is and what it can do.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest methods to getting fast results, if you ask me. What you see in a lot of organizations is there's a lot of mail, there are a lot of Excels and PowerPoints and plans and suggestions going around. But to get this to innovate and get to producing new products, a lot of organizations and people and departments get stuck. That's what I just said as well. What you need to do is get people working together, and for some time we now know that can be online and offline. But what we ask of them is to wipe their schedules clear and just focus on the design sprint. And in the first day, you just start analyzing what kind of problem you have. And the second day you start with ideation, and you try new ideas and some interaction. There is all kind of sketching sessions through the day, and in the end you select the best ideas and start to make a prototype, which is for most organizations very quickly after 2 days starting with a prototype or a couple of prototypes of new ideas. And then the next day you start using the prototype and test it with real users, or at least some people of the target group, to get the first results of what people like or dislike about this tool or product you developed. So at the end of the week you can actually present something tried and tested, and something you have as a collectively created from all kinds of different angles. So even from budget to communication. When you put all these people in one room, you can really check the faults and create great stuff within a week. So then there really is a tangible idea instead of some kind of theoretically written word proposal. Yeah, well, almost in every single case, it's a success socially, business-wise, and creatively, and that's really, that's for me, that's so nice to see. That you can get results in such a small amount of time with speed, and still have something which is also validated by users.
Yeah, and so it's basically bringing together all different kind of departments. It depends, of course, if the company is bigger or smaller, but you bring them together, and they are together are brainstorming, and out of that there comes the new solution. And that means as well, if you mentioned it as well, that the only step you have to take, because I think this is also a good thing for stakeholder management, the only step you have to take is go to the MT management team to check, to verify if they agree and want to continue with the solution, which you created with all these different departments or specialists, right?
Yeah, and even when it's not successful, that's what some people sometimes misunderstand. When you test a prototype with users, so you have created all these ideas, then made a prototype of the best one or the best two. Then you go out and test it with users. This doesn't mean the product is finished, but if you compare a proposal in which you state the target group needs this or will need that, it's all theory. And in the case of a prototype, it can even be that people say, I don't like this, or there's this story about a company who made a podcast application, and there was this intro by a famous American, and in the design sprint he did the narrative of the introduction of the application, but people didn't like his voice in that case, so they presented that to their board of directors with the notion that the intro should change immediately after they created that tool. So, and that's no problem, because then you know, and we all know how many times you have created something which has months of work in it, and then the same thing happens. So it's no problem if there's something wrong, or there are still points to develop further or improve on. But it's tangible. It's like not describing a glass to someone, but giving them a cylinder made from paper even. So if you pour water in it, it will fall apart after a minute. But the moment you give it to them, you can ask if they like the shape, for instance. Which is really much better, and also a lot more fun to see what people do with your product. I think it's just a great way to move very quick in improving, well, almost anything. I think so even if you have a company restaurant and there are issues, or you want to go to the next level, you should consider using the steps, improving stuff in a few days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, and this is a great tool to do so, because I think that, well, at least it was for us, the fact that you want to have a certain velocity, pace, speed, and you cannot roll concepts out as soon as possible. Yeah, that frustrates. So and a design sprint really helps there. What was the best design sprint you ever had? Do you have one in mind? You don't have to say CCV, but
yeah, well, I really like that one. Yeah, like I said, I think. Well, I must say, at my former employer, which is for the Dutch listeners, UWV, which is, I think, widely known for its dinosaur-like movements and not really for their speed and development. There are so many departments, so many rules. It's if I may say so, sometimes the politics force their hand. So that's what we also saw, because one of the greatest was an application related to employer benefits. But there were so many rules that we created a user experience which was easier. Anybody who knows these organizations will now think, oh yeah, that's great. That's what we thought, what the users thought. We tested this at local branches where real people came by looking for jobs and using our prototype in the little rooms which they normally come to explain that they are really looking for jobs. So and those people were really, I want to use this, it's so much better than you had before, but the political rules were too complicated to create this really easy user experience. So this design sprint was a great success, but reality was different. So the improvement happened, but not as much as could have been, I think. So if in a more creative approach, that could have been an even easier tool than this case. But that was really a great example of joint forces in an organization which has processes challenging your speed always, and that was I think one of the greatest design sprints, just because it felt like you were playing like a soccer finals, and that was really nice because every department which was involved, and some of them are just some people's jobs are just about developing the application of rule sets. So this wouldn't be my dream job, but even those people were integrated in this process of playing with improving tasks for their customers or clients, and that was such a great vibe to see.
You mentioned it already. Now you are working for AID, but you work for UWV as well. When you were little, what did you want to become when you were little? What was your dream job at that point? Did you have a dream job?
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah,
several, I think, through my early years. At first, for a very long time, I'd like to be I wished to be an archaeologist, and still I think history and stuff like that is still one of my passions, but not professionally. And in the next step, that was I think when I started watching crime series on TV. So I think I was a bit around 10, 11, I think. Then I thought I want to be a lawyer. a crime advocate. And also on the side, I was always drawing, so that's why I ended up at art school in the end, through different paths. But in the end, I ended up there. But then I was really trying and hoping to be a comic artist. So and still, when I speak these words, there's still a little heartbeat for all these jobs. That's something. Yeah, I've tried a lot of things, so that maybe it's no surprise, but it surprises myself at this time when you ask me and I answer it. That's still, archaeology is still something which interests me very much. So, and also art and comics and drawings is really one of my passions. So as a consumer, but also to do it at a small level with my kids, but also just for relaxation.
Yeah. And okay, so that those are three totally different things.
Yeah.
But eventually you had to start focusing on something. So what was did you have a path towards it, or did you have an idea how to achieve that?
Well, when I went to high school, reading was also one of my passions and connects to all the other things and still does. So language and literature specifically was really a driver for me. And in high school, the languages and history and also the arts were already fascinations. But then when you have my age, people will understand, then something entered the curriculum, and I think it was in physics, but I'm not sure. It was the computer. So that was the first time it was around, and that was really fascinating. And so that's when I started saving up for a home computer, a Commodore 64.
Yeah.
And my parents had an electronics shop, and they started selling those things. So in the village, more people were grabbed by this new and hopeful thing.
Yeah.
And so there was this network of game trading and stuff like that. And so I was really, really hooked on computers at that time. And then I thought, well, I have to switch because at that time it was just something which was introduced during physics, and your exams were not about IT or computers at all. So I started looking for different kinds of education, in which the main reason was really, is there computer science something you can do for your exam?
Yeah.
So then I went to I'm not sure how you call that in English, but to an MBO.
Yeah.
Which was great, but it was also easy, and that was there were a lot of teachers in my high school who said, well, and you can't go to college straight away or to university straight away, and you should really reconsider. And I was just so focused on this computer stuff, so I just did what I wanted, but was really easy, and I learned a lot of computer languages and programming. I made something in BASIC even for my exams, which was a record store storage system. And so combined music and computers in one. And then I ended, and that was the choice. If you go to college now, it's most likely to go to an economic college. And I was like, I've been doing bookkeeping, administration, marketing, and economics for all these years. I'm done with that, really. I liked it, but it's enough. So I thought, well, I'd like to do something cultural now. I've been missing out on that for years. Missing literature. We had, of course, Dutch and English, and we had to read stuff, but it's different. So that's when I started looking around how to get into languages. And there was this route through college to become a teacher in English and Dutch. Today it's just one subject, but at that time you could just study 2 subjects and become a teacher. And I thought, well, I'll do just 1 year, and then I'll go to university and do Dutch or English, whatever my liking is at that time. But then, study time happened, so I spent 6 years in the college to become a teacher. Although I knew after a year or 2, I'm not going to work at a school. But it was a great study, because that was also the time, it was really progressive education. And there was one teacher who was really focused on creative writing and literature. And there was a time, it's hardly recognizable, I think, if you look at it today, but where grammar was really the black sheep in all the subjects, because that wasn't interesting, and it was really the idea that you should be expressing yourself more than learning all those rules, teachers, but also pupils. So that was really quite cinematic as an experience, because this was the time when we wrote so many stories, poems, books, some people even, and read a lot, but also had nights at the home, really luxurious home of the head teacher, with all the students, with wine and literature and stuff like that. Just it was the That Poet Society, that movie. That's kind of a vibe I recognize a lot. So this was really a great time.
You were looking for that as well, right?
The cultural aspect was really well represented, and also I did a lot of stuff to distract me from studying, so that's why it took a long time. And so I just finished to have my diploma and my bachelor, and I'm still happy with that. As down the line, I went to teach as well, but not in a high school.
No, exactly. but you initially you wanted to go to university, but because life happened, study happened,
fun happened.
Fun happened. You eventually chose not to, right?
Yeah. I chose not to. After 6 years, at that time you could study 6 years with a scholarship from the government. So at that time, you ran out of money. So that was kind of the idea. But because I knew I didn't want to stand in front of a class, I was already exploring different ways of developing myself towards some kind of profession. So I did a course on copywriting, which went very well, and got more and more intrigued with advertising and design. And then a friend of mine said, during that course you're doing, you're playing with typefaces and the design so much. I don't think you want to write the copies, but you want to design the stuff. So I'm doing graphic design at art school. Come and have a look. It might be something for you. So that was when I was really, hooked by the vibe, by the stuff they were doing. So I tried to do an entrance exam, and I could enroll. So the day I got my diploma as a teacher, I didn't have a party because that night I had it was part-time education. So at that same day I had to start the same night.
Serious?
with my first lessons at art school. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I have to. Well, I'll laugh about myself at this moment, but then it really felt like, yeah, well, so I finished this finally after 6 years, on to the next. And I'm not quite so good with the rituals, so diplomas and parties to celebrate that was quite a nice escape. But yeah, so then I did art school and became a designer.
Oh, wow. And I'd like to zoom in on that on the art school later on as well. But before you were going to the art school, you said, "Okay, it took me 6 years to finish to get my bachelor's."
Yeah.
Did you only focus on school and learn, or did you work next to it as well?
I did work next to my study, and that was in the, how do you say that in English? In restaurants and bars, and that was a really great time. But also the hours didn't really match with studying, especially the greatest job I had during my study was that I worked in a night bar, and it has shaped me and my view on the world very much. It was really fun, and it was a bit like a Tarantino film. I worked there with one of my study mates. We lived in the same dorm, and we worked together as well. But we had to start at 8 o'clock, and it was a night cafe, but it opened at 8 o'clock. So, but at 8, nobody comes there. So then we had just our own recreation room, and since this was a quite, strange bar, really, the boss said, "Well, you can drink as much as you like. Just play some pool, but when the customers come, you have to work your ass off." So that's what we did, but most of the time we were already tipsy before the first customer came, which it was a combination of freedom and also responsibility, because the boss was really a really nice but strange guy, because he just told us that, and then what he did was go out himself. And as we worked out longer, there was a club of students who had made that cafe their home spot, but also all kinds of people with more shady business. When everything else closed at that time, there wasn't the closing times were regulated, so you had to have a permit. And at that time, we were one of those locations which had a permit. So everybody who had to close down in the rest of the city came to us. So at 2 o'clock, it became packed every night, but with all kinds of colorful people, and like I said, some even with really shady jobs, dealers, armed people, people with coffee shops and stuff like that, and really strange but also very fun people. And then there were, of course, all these kinds of strange stuff. One of the best friends of my owner was a petty criminal, but he was also a kickboxer. So that he always entered in contests, doing something with kicking in the street, like the parking meter. So they did contests about how many times you can hit the parking meter with your shins, because he had fought so much. All the nerves in his shins were gone. So, stuff like that. And he also had really strange business going, and then at one time he escaped from police and hid in our basement for a week, stuff like that. And my owner was a collector of more or less antique guns,
Yeah.
They were also in the bar. So after closing hours, around 5, 6, he sometimes thought it would be nice to shoot at the ladies and gentlemen signs in the bar with those old guns. So really strange stuff.
Yeah.
But well, yeah, and there were a lot of people. You could see how their life went, and I also saw that sometimes, if not everything's going well, how easily you can get sucked in, bad ways. And it has shaped my view on people and how life can be easy, but also very hard.
Yeah.
To walk a path towards what's generally known as success.
Yeah.
And the brotherhood among people, outside of the rules, really, that was quite inspiring.
Yeah.
So even when I worked at a school during my study, I had started at 8, but I stopped at 6. And like I said, we drank ourselves during work. So it was in front of 30-year-old people, kids, who said, "Well, how was your weekend, Mister?" And then you thought, "Well, I'm not going to tell this." That was really, really strange.
Yeah. And did you stop working for the nightclub when you were starting with art school?
Yeah. Then I moved to another city, and something which also was pressing was the fact that I had to really make a living, because before it was a job next to a study, which is quite different. And so in the second year of art school, I started my own single-person design shop.
Okay.
So I worked in the day in the profession I was still learning, but you could perform being a designer without a diploma, so that was no problem.
Yeah.
It was hard times learning on the job, but also great. And a lot of I have to thank a lot of people who believed in me at that time, because that's how I rolled into the job.
How was it to combine it together with your study? Because you said along the day you were working, and in the night you were studying, or the other way around. Was it easy to do so?
I was really hooked on the profession, on design, and in a certain way that I'm still, but I was eating, drinking, breathing design, but also the typography, history, and stuff like that, together with fellow students. So that was really, design was a large part of my life. So it was hard in that sense, combining day job assignments with study assignments is really hard, and also combining these packaging designs, which weren't really on the creative or artistic level, weren't really up to scratch to be what I dreamt of as a designer. But still, the combination worked. Also had at that time my wife-to-be. At that time, we lived together, and she was also. I met her at the other school, so she was already teaching, and she was. When it was really hard, she was supporting me rather than that we lived together. So when I was not making enough money, she helped me out.
Okay.
So it was really a great time, and it was hard work. But when you follow a passion, hard work is different hard work than when you need to do it just to get by. And so also was a longer time, so there were 4 nights in a week, 5 year long, which could at times it was frustrating, but it was also a prolonged student's life.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
Most people who here, so in the end, I studied for 11 years.
yeah.
And 11 years of study makes you a different person, because most people start building their career in half of that time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, I still notice that makes my path a bit different. But also rewarding, I think.
Yeah.
And so I've worked for, I think, almost 10 years as a single design shop. So
Yeah.
and then met other people and partnerships. And, we had a design agency and started doing UX design, which was invented at that time. Eventually, we grew as a UX design agency and got serious local government jobs as well, working for communities and stuff like that. But then the crisis hit, and there was really lots of promises from clients which they couldn't follow up. At that time, so there's years between. I was with the mother of my daughter, and we had a family of 6, so there was a different game than in the beginning.
Yeah.
And these were quite challenging times, and that was the time when I concluded that working for a company which has a great focus on UX design was also an option. And that's how I ended up at UFA, because they did some kind of refresh. They didn't have a real design department in-house, and I thought they needed it because working with externals was too complicated. Nobody knew what was true on design level.
Yeah.
So there was a new manager coming from one of the larger mobile phone companies, and they changed everything and created a team of UX designers together with a department of online servicing. So everything was new, and it was especially in the beginning, we had free hand at changing every kind of process considering design and innovation. And so that's why we also developed these ways of working like Google did. So design sprint was introduced and stuff like that. That's also where we created breakout days and started working at the student hotel in Amsterdam. In the lobby there was this inspirational designed room in which you weren't bothered, so you could really focus on designing new stuff. So we worked out of the office when we felt like it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was really really great.
Yeah. So you set it up and you could do whatever felt best to make sure that you worked in the best and most efficient way for UFA in this sense.
That was really, I think it's really a great move, because at that time the organization had a lot of bases built through the years, but in the design world, in online world, there was all these new kinds of working. So what they did was really nice. They got people from all kinds of online corners. So there were several people who had their own companies before, and then you work in a different way than when you're when you grow up in an organization like that. So that was one of the assets, but also people from companies like Booking, who were when they their breath was even online. So there was, I think, a really great move to diversify the organization and create new stuff.
Yeah.
But also a nice environment, because everybody around me did understand me, and we were all catching up to each other.
Yeah.
That's a real, a great feeding ground for innovation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that sounds really like a power team and a good way to, good moment, good timing to enter as he wakes her. Yeah, that's really really
and also a
interesting.
great way to enter not working as your own boss anymore.
Yeah, but did you miss that?
Well,
Sorry.
no, I didn't really miss that, because, like I said, there was a lot of freedom, and the assets I developed in being my own boss were needed in that job. But you can imagine, when you're your own boss and you go working for one of the banks or an organization or a ministry, people have an opinion. So I was at every birthday or party where I went was like, "You're going to work where?" Because they couldn't really see that happening. But what happened was totally different from what the organization is known for. So this was, I liked it, and especially because of the people and the room for improvement.
What do you get out of work? What excites you?
Yeah, that's something which is funny, since I just elaborated on the computer part. But in the end, if I combine anything I try to learn, like the languages, even the teaching part, but also designing, there's one key factor binding it, which is human interaction and people, and my lessons from working in a night club is about people and their what drives them, what motivates them, how they react to stuff. Really, I think that's what's interesting in every job. So it's not very likely, but even when I start working at a restaurant now, that will be the good part. Interacting with people, seeing what they like. I really like to cook, for instance, and I'm not aspiring to do that professionally. I don't think it would work that well, but it's fun and it's reasonable. But I really like it, because you're creating something which evokes a reaction, a feeling in other people, and that's where some kind of magic happens. And I think that's really, that's professionally, but also personally, what drives me at any time. The interest in people and their motives.
And is it important for you then what people think of you from a work perspective or on as an individual?
That there used to be really important part of how I reasoned with myself. So there's the interest in people, but there's also something which used to be quite destructive. And I think if you take a look at social media, I think it's destructive for a lot of people. Just the inspirational quotes you can find online are endless, I think. The strange thing is the path I followed, switching studies, which can get people to misunderstand you or have questions or even criticize you. I have always chosen my own way, and I think that always went well. I was quite happy with being somewhat of a non-conformist, but on the other hand, there was always something very and now I think it's sad, which always was, I'd like to be different, no problem, rebel, no problem, but in the end people had to validate me. So it was like even at UFA, where people said, well, I can see you're creative, you're a designer, and but you have tattoos, and yeah, well, I can imagine you as a tattoo artist. Like, it was like, I can imagine you as a pimp or or a bank robber, and it really got to me. That was really, well, that's especially that stuff. So it's no problem deviating from the norm, but in the end, people had to say, well, for someone who's different, you're good, or you're good enough, or you're smart enough, or you're a really nice guy. And I really, at that time, I didn't really notice. And stuff happened, like fathers-in-law, in which you got into conflict with, which is, I think, something which can happen. But it kept on bugging me because I didn't feel validated. Mm-hmm. And this also, which may come as no surprise, in your personal relations, especially intimate relations, you will see that present as well. So towards the end of the relationship with the mother of my daughter, through the steps we did make at that time, I ended up with a coach, had this kind of workshop, which I signed up for just because I thought she was very good. So I didn't really have a plan. And then I came there, and there were these questions. Yeah, so what is it you will start working on? And of course, the validation was something I had already recognized as something which bugged me, but I didn't really have a plan to do something about it. What she did was it was a variant in several different situations. Most of the time, they use a method in which you position yourself in relation to your family. Mm-hmm. But in this case, what she did was asking me to define several pieces of my personality. One who was continuously giving to a certain point where it was really too much, but at a moment that my boundaries were broken for 3 times already, so I exploded. That was really the mean bastard. Really, that was one of them. The other one was the balanced me. I think we all have that one. But also there was this nagging guy who was constant. But what do they think of me? And can I have some attention? Can you validate me? And what she did was let people play those roles and let me be my complete me. So when you were in conversation about a subject, the person's performing the role of that one aspect of you, they were really confronting. And I had done coaching in several situations before on different subjects, but at that time it really clicked how destructive that was. And I'm not really very spiritual or really into that kind of stuff, but this worked so well for me, as in enlightening how you really destroy yourself by doing one thing and expecting something else, and not setting boundaries just to be approved. So if you do something which is really one step too far, and you don't mention anything to someone, they don't know it's too far.
Yeah.
But what I did was give, but beneath it was already too much, and then I did explode. But it was all driven by this if I do this, just one step more and just a little bit longer, and I'll
Keep on
endure
pushing.
this.
Yeah.
And then then my eyes opened. So I'm a much happier person since I really envisioned this guy asking for the improvement all the time when I'm doing something wrong. And of course, that's why the yes/no question was so interesting. What do you? What was it again?
Yeah. Do you care about?
Do you
the
care
things?
about what
Yeah.
people think? Of course.
Yeah.
I think I love to take photographs, and I share these a lot on social media. So there's also this whole attention thing. I mean, you don't publish something if you don't want it to be seen.
Yeah.
But ever since that moment, I have dealt with myself. I'm also a lot less driven by what people will think. I'll just share my passions, which makes it much easier. Whatever it is, I can share it because it's my account. Account. If you don't like it, don't watch it.
Yeah.
So it's in little things, but also in larger stuff. I used to try to convince people of something which is the best way, in my eyes. And now I just have become a lot better in just stating, this is the reason why I do it. You take it from here. If you don't accept it, if you don't embrace it, well, don't, but this is it. And I still like it if you can high five on something. Well, we both agree, so don't get me wrong, but not in a destructive way. So of course I like it when someone likes something you do, and it's always nice if someone likes the dinner you cooked, for instance. But I don't extend it to so much that it's about me when someone doesn't like it. And I used to do that, even in silence, even while claiming I was a rebel or didn't care and stuff like that. So that's one of my great eye openers. Really.
Yeah, I can imagine. And for the listeners, what is the trick to deal with opinions then? Because you learned it by practice, by seeing it yourself, by being confronted with yourself. Yeah. But what's the thing? What if you are in situations like that? What do you do to trigger yourself to think, okay, it doesn't matter that much as long as I accept it?
Actually, I think a lot of, which is no surprise if you look at where I come from, but a lot of stuff I do is about reasoning, language, communicating. I work at a UX agency, so it's about that stuff. But what I do now is much more at a gut level. Is the feeling, if you're trying to convince someone on good grounds, or just to create your own security. While I was always someone who would say you need tension and safety in balance, there was still this little voice trying to create this improvement, and then you start reasoning and explaining the logic rather. And what I do now is just, of course, there's this point in which you do some reasoning to explain something, and then there's this feeling, and it really it is also about envisioning this guy who played that part of me, which is looking for improvement in a destructive way.
Yeah.
And of course, you are what you are, so it's not foolproof, far from. but it's really a different. I think, yeah, well, it's really a different form of me.
Yeah.
I'm much more at peace. Also, yeah, even professionally, but also personally.
Yeah.
And that's really about feeling the feelings rather than convincing yourself or others with reasoning.
Exactly. Yeah.
And well, that's why that part. I'm not that spiritual, but there are two levels of experiencing something. At that gut level, which is more instinctive, and the other more reasoning.
Yeah.
And they have to be in balance, and they weren't.
Yeah.
It was all reasoning. I could explain my feelings, for instance, very well, but it was an explanation at a distance, not really from the feelings you experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And that's I think that was always a struggle, and that's where those inspirational quotes come from, because it's not something which is finished. A lot of people who know me, for instance, who are listening, might say, "Well, so now he's all secure and stuff." I don't think that's true. Of course, everybody has, I think, insecurities, and also they are nice, but as a driver to improving yourself, I still believe in that. But when it gets destructive of your interactions with others, and how you deep down how you feel about yourself, there you're losing something. And it takes a lot of energy which I'm not spending at this time. And that's really I think that's real improvement.
Yeah, absolutely.
It feels much better.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, and talking about energy, I mean, it will cost you so much less energy that you can spend your energy on positive things as well. So I think it's really inspiring, and really a big insight that that is very valuable for you as a person and as a professional, I guess, as well. Yeah. All right. Unfortunately, Reinier, I have to wrap it up because we're out of time. I really enjoyed this conversation and the insights you shared with us. I only have one more question, and that is: do you know another inspiring person who we could invite for the before and after show?
Yeah, I do, and I think I hope you will find her and connect with her, so that it will be the next one, because I think it fits perfectly. I've already asked her if it's okay to name her, because otherwise it would be so awkward. It's Sandra van Kolfschoot.
Okay.
And I told her about the before and after, dealing with life-changing stuff, in which she has become very good, I think. I smile, but not everything is great, but she's also very people-driven. She works in the field of education, and it's really inspiring how she can focus on people in a world which is dominated by systems, destroying talents of people. So I'm not going to reveal anything more, but yeah, really, I think really you should talk to her, which is really fitting for the stuff you're trying to get across.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for sharing, and I definitely will reach out to her, and let's hope that she will join in one of the next episodes.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Right.
I will be listening.
All right, one listener at least. That's good.
Yeah,
okay,
that's a good start.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much for your time. I like I said, I really enjoyed it, and especially the last part was really inspiring, I guess, where you talked about the opinions of others and how to deal with it.
Yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me and having me. And I think we could fill another hour, so no worries there.
No, exactly.
I had fun, and I hope you can create something worth listening for other people as well.
Absolutely. I'm convinced that I can. So thank you, and we'll keep in touch.
All right.